Let's talk about the Washington Commanders draft recap right now while we've been at it. Interesting team. There are a ton of questions about this team overall from top to bottom. And by I mean top, I mean all the way up to the very top of the organization, from the ownership going all the way down to the last player on this team. No one really knows the direction this team is going. You bring in Carson Wentz. Are you going to be able to hang on to Terry McLaurin after this season? Who really knows? So I think at this point you can kind of go BPA in a lot of situations and kind of see what you get. They end up in their very first pick. They bring in another wide receiver in Jahan Dotson, a guy who I love. Jahan Dotson. His tape was sensational. Best receiver to come out of Penn State since Chris Godwin. The one-handed catch he had against Ohio State just kind of epitomizes, like, for a guy 5'10", he probably has the biggest catch rate as someone under 5'10" I've ever seen. The guy is incredible when it comes to route runner, shifty, can do everything at the stem. He can manipulate at all three levels, can even get separation like we're talking about at the top of the catch. It's a guy who can step in and be that number two, eventually maybe be that number one if Terry McLaurin does move on. I prefer him as the number two personally. I would not want to see him just be that number one alpha. Maybe we'll see what happens with Curtis Samuel this year. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Logan Thomas also comes back from injury, but at the end of the day, all of these wide receivers and pass catchers, it's all going to be predicated on the success of Carson Wentz, which is going to be a difficult thing for me to put a lot of trust in. But in terms of the pick, you can't argue with the talent of Jahan Dotson.
No, and he probably went a little bit earlier than a lot of people thought he was going to. But when I spoke to him at the Penn State Pro Day, like, you could tell this was a dude. He has an infectious personality when he speaks, especially when he was talking to the local Penn State guys that he knew and had seen and talked to for the past 3 seasons. You could tell he was messing with the media a little bit, but in a lighthearted manner. He's a very fun personality, very well spoken, says the right things all the time. And he's very confident in himself without having the arrogance that you sometimes get from the wide receiver position. So he is one of my favorite players from this draft class, just as an individual. And then when I was at the pro day as well, that ball barely makes a sound when it hits his hands. And they are probably the softest in this draft class. I mean, It's amazing to see how easily the ball just disappears when it hits his hands. So very nice pick for them. Definitely a culture guy in that locker room, which is something that they're going to need. Because they had players, 2 Alabama players last year get into a fight on the sidelines, and Carson Wentz is their quarterback. So they need that level-headedness from their top draft pick.
Well, speaking of Alabama, they decided to double dip with their next 2 picks in round 2 at 47. You bring in Finderian Mathis, defensive tackle from Alabama. Going to be in a little bit of a competition with Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen in the right at the very front with at the defensive tackle. And then in round 3, you bring in Brian Robinson at pick 98, which is a interesting pick to say the least. I think NFL guys probably love him a little bit more than I do. Brian Robinson was a guy who kind of got what he got behind this team. He doesn't bring a ton of juice whatsoever. He'll be a good first and second down thumper, maybe inside the red zone. But I mean, it wasn't like Antonio Gibson ever really had issues getting into the end zone. I knew a couple of, it was the rookie season, like 7 touchdowns and 55 touches. Like, that's what this guy can do. You still have JD Mckissack on this team, who bailed on signing a contract with Buffalo to come back. So you add in a little bit more running back depth alongside Jarrett Patterson. Like I said, 2 interesting picks, but look, I mean, can you really go wrong bringing in Alabama guys at the end of the day?
Well, it's a well that they go back to all of the time and has spanned multiple coaching staffs, because Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, both Alabama defensive tackles, when they get their eyes on a Alabama defensive tackle that is supposed to go around that value, they're going to draft him, apparently. And Finderian Mathis is a good player. He's not somebody who I really expect to be a high upside pass rusher type, but somebody who I think is going to be a good run defender. And it's not like they need him to really be that pass rusher, because they have that in Jonathan Allen. So it'll be interesting. He won't replace Matt Ioannidis from that aspect, at least. But he is going to be a strong at the point of attack run defender. The Brian Robinson pick was very interesting to me, and I didn't love it. I thought that he was just going to be a Dallas Cowboy and in round 4 or round 5. Like, that's just kind of how I thought it was going to be, because he is the type of back that the Cowboys like. He's a discount Ezekiel Elliott. In the fact that he is a between the tackles downhill type of runner. He is a strong bodied guy.
He's just not going to pull away from anyone.
He's not going to pull away from anybody. He's not going to make big plays. It'll be interesting to see how he is as a pass catcher, but
he can bring
they're
the
not
wood,
going to
though.
use him. They're not going to use him like that because, like you said, they have JD McKissick, and Antonio Gibson was literally a wide receiver in college.
He had 33 carries when he was at college. Like, this is what he does. He catches the ball.
Yep.
I think for me, like I said, when you have Brian Robinson, I would have taken like Damon Pierce, Zamir White, or Pierce Strong off the board first over top of a Brian Robinson. I think all of those guys are fantastic. I mean, Damon Pierce could be a day one starter for the Houston Texans over top of Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead. And then we have with the Las Vegas Raiders declining the 5th-year option for Josh Jacobs. You also have Kenyon Drake coming back off an ankle injury. Zamir White is going to be the starter for this team probably in 2023, and I wouldn't be surprised if he sees reps this year just as early too. So like I said, I probably would have taken him over top, but look, you fit the guy you want on your team. You like Brian Robinson, take him. I'm not going to argue with it too much. And then round 4, 113, Percy Butler, the safety out of Louisiana. Then around 5, Sam Howell, the fall for the quarterback finally stops. And this is a guy who, like, I would not be surprised if we see Sam Howell under center at some point this year. Would not be surprised.
Nope.
Whether it is Carson Wentz not playing well or whether it's just simply due to Carson Wentz also getting hurt. I know the Indianapolis Colts would rather see Carson Wentz on the field because I believe it's the 70 or 90%, one of the two. As long as the play hits that snap threshold, the conditional 3rd-round pick turns to a 2nd-round pick. So they want Carson Wentz on the field. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, I was not surprised he goes as far, and I think he's got a chance to play as soon as this year. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I really like Sam Howell. I'm a kind of a closet Sam Howell truther.
I have a couple of his jerseys. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like this pick. What I don't like is that they had to call Carson Wentz and say, hey, we're going to draft a quarterback in round 5. Like if your franchise quarterback crumbles because you picked a quarterback in the 5th round, you don't have a quarterback.
I mean, the Titans didn't even tell Tannehill they were taking Willis.
No, so it's going to be really interesting to see how all of this shakes out. It's just the Carson Wentz effect, really. But I like Sam Howell, and listen, he is an immediate upgrade from Taylor Heineke. So there's at least that.
I think Taylor Heineke is still riding on that cult following he had when they almost knocked off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until he had a shoulder injury.
That's exactly what's happening. Yep.
And then in round 5, you bring in Cole Turner, the tight end out of Nevada. He makes the hard catches look easy. He was that red zone threat for Strong. I like this pick, honestly, a lot. I think it's a little more underrated. He's not going to be like the most well-rounded guy, but if you want a contested catch guy or a red zone threat, I think Cole Turner makes a lot of sense and brings some much-needed size to the Washington patch catchers. It's a smaller group overall, so I think that's a really nice pick. I would not be surprised if we see him out there from day one, or I should say fairly soon at that point, not as a normal tight end, but as the more of that big slot alongside with Logan Thomas, run a little more 12 personnel inside the red zone to get some of these bigger bodies out there, then bringing your route runners in there behind him. I like that pick. Then in the 7th round, they didn't have a 6. You get Chris Paul, not the shooting guard, but this one's just the guard from Tulsa, and then Christian Holmes, the cornerback from Oklahoma State. It doesn't overwhelm me. It's not a draft that really blows me away. Just kind of whatever, I guess. That's my thing. It's okay. There's some good players. We'll see if they ended up developing, but no one that really wows me. But what about you guys? What about the Washington fans? Let us know what you guys think about the Washington Commanders draft and what they got from the 2022 NFL draft. Let us know down there in the comments. While you're down there, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, so you guys make sure you stay informed and up to date on all things coming out from Pro Football Network.